The champagne was flowing, the music was perfect, and I was about to marry the love of my life. Standing in my dream wedding dress, looking out at 200 smiling faces, I felt like I was living in a fairy tale. The venue was everything I'd imagined: a beautiful garden overlooking the lake, white roses everywhere, and golden sunlight filtering through the trees. "You look absolutely radiant," my maid of honor Jessica whispered as she adjusted my veil one last time. I squeezed her hand, too emotional to speak. 3 years of planning had led to this moment, and everything was perfect. Mark looked incredibly handsome in his black tuxedo, waiting for me at the altar with tears in his eyes. His best man patted his shoulder reassuringly while the string quartet played our song. My parents were crying happy tears in the front row, and even my usually stoic father was dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. Mark's family seemed just as emotional. His mother had given the sweetest speech at the rehearsal dinner about gaining a daughter, not losing a son. She'd welcomed me into their family with such warmth that I'd actually teared up. His father had shaken my hand firmly and said, "We're lucky to have you." Even Mark's usually quiet brother had made a toast about how happy Mark had been since meeting me. The ceremony was like something out of a movie. When Mark saw me walking down the aisle, his face lit up with pure joy. The officiant's words about love and commitment felt deeply personal, like they were written just for us. When we exchanged rings, Mark's hands were shaking with emotion. "I promise to love, honor, and protect you for the rest of my life," he said, his voice breaking slightly. The words felt so sincere, so real. I believed every single one. But as we moved into the reception, I started noticing small things that seemed off. Mark's phone kept buzzing in his pocket during our photos, and he kept checking it with an annoyed expression. When I asked if everything was okay, he just smiled tightly and said, "Work stuff, nothing important." During cocktail hour, I overheard a heated whispered conversation between Mark and his brother near the bar. I caught fragments, something about not the right time and just get through today. When they noticed me approaching, they immediately switched to talking about football. Jessica pulled me aside with a concerned look. "Is everything okay? Mark seems really tense." "Wedding nerves," I said, brushing off her worry. "You know how stressed he gets about big events." But there was something else. His mother kept watching me with an odd expression, not the warm smile from the rehearsal dinner, but something calculating. Whenever I caught her eye, she'd quickly look away. The band announced our first dance, and Mark extended his hand with that charming smile I'd fallen for. As we moved onto the dance floor, all my worries melted away. This was it, our perfect moment. But during our first dance, Mark whispered something in my ear that made my blood run cold. "You embarrassed me during the ceremony. We'll talk about this later." Mark's whisper was so quiet that no one else could hear, but his tone was ice cold against my ear. My heart skipped a beat. Embarrassed him? I replayed the entire ceremony in my mind as we swayed to our wedding song, trying to figure out what I could have possibly done wrong. I'd said my vows perfectly, hadn't tripped, hadn't cried too much. What was he talking about? "Mark, what do you mean?" I whispered back, trying to keep my smile in place for the hundreds of people watching us. His grip on my waist tightened uncomfortably. "Don't play dumb. You know exactly what you did." But I honestly had no idea. The ceremony had been perfect. Everyone had complimented how beautiful it was, how happy we looked together. I felt confused and hurt, but kept dancing, not wanting to create a scene. As the song ended, Mark's charming smile snapped back into place as if nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek for the cameras, and everyone applauded, but the warmth had completely left his eyes. The reception continued, but the atmosphere had shifted for me. Mark became increasingly cold and distant, barely speaking to me except when photos required it. He started drinking more heavily than usual, downing whiskey after whiskey between conversations with his groomsmen. I tried to enjoy myself, dancing with my dad and chatting with college friends, but I kept catching glimpses of Mark across the room. He was becoming increasingly aggressive with the wedding vendors, snapping at the photographer for taking too many pictures of her side of the family, and rudely dismissing the DJ when he asked about song requests. "Easy there, buddy," I heard his best man say during one particularly harsh exchange with a waiter. "It's your wedding day." Mark's response chilled me. Some people need to learn their place. His family's behavior was changing too. The warmth from the rehearsal dinner was gone, replaced by cold stares and whispered conversations that stopped whenever I approached. His mother kept giving me these calculating looks, like she was studying me for some kind of test. When his uncle made a toast about keeping wives in line, the men at his table laughed while the women looked uncomfortable. I tried to catch Mark's eye, expecting him to shut down that kind of talk, but he was actually smirking. "This isn't normal," Jessica said, appearing at my side. "The way they're all acting, it's like they planned something." Before I could respond, Mark's mother approached us with that fake, concerned expression she'd perfected. "Dear, we need to discuss your behavior today." My stomach dropped. My behavior? She began listing complaints that made no sense. Apparently, I'd rolled my eyes during the ceremony, been disrespectful to the family, and was attention-seeking with my emotions. None of it was true, but she delivered each accusation with such conviction that I started doubting myself. That's when Mark grabbed my wrist and pulled me behind the head table. "We need to talk, now." Mark's grip on my wrist was painful as he dragged me behind the head table, away from the main reception area, but still visible to many guests. "Mark, you're hurting me," I said, trying to pull away, but his grip tightened. "You've been disrespecting my family all day," he hissed, his face twisted with anger I'd never seen before. "My mother told me everything, the eye rolling, the attitude, making faces during the ceremony." "That's not true," I protested, genuinely confused. "I didn't do any of those things. I don't understand what's happening." "Don't lie to me." His voice was getting louder, and I noticed several guests turning to look at us. The music seemed quieter somehow, and I could feel people staring. "Mark, please, people are watching," I whispered desperately. "Can we please talk about this later? Whatever your mother thinks she saw." "Don't you dare blame my mother," he shouted. And now the music actually did stop. The DJ must have noticed the commotion. "She's been nothing but kind to you, and you've been a spoiled brat all day." The entire reception hall was silent now. 200 guests were staring at us, phones coming out, cameras turning in our direction. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I was more worried about Mark. I'd never seen him like this. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone," he screamed, his face red with rage. "This is my wedding day, and you're ruining it." "Mark, I don't know what you think I did, but this is what happens when you disrespect my family." That's when he did something I never could have imagined in 1,000 years. Mark reached down, pulled off his polished black dress shoe, and struck me across the face with it. The sound echoed through the completely silent reception hall like a gunshot. I staggered backward, my hand flying to my cheek where the shoe had connected. The pain was sharp and immediate, but the shock was even worse. My husband, had just hit me with his shoe in front of 200 wedding guests. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I could see camera phones recording, the wedding photographer's flash going off, people's mouths hanging open in disbelief. Mark's mother stood in the background with what I swear was a satisfied smirk barely hidden behind her hand. "How dare you," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tears starting to fall. "How dare you do this to me on our wedding day?" Mark's face changed instantly from rage to shock, as if he was just realizing what he'd done. "Sarah, I didn't mean." "Save it." I looked out at our guests, my friends, my family, his family, all staring in horror. This marriage is over. I straightened my shoulders, held my head high despite the stinging pain and crushing humiliation, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted before me like the Red Sea. I drove away in my wedding dress, but I had no idea the real nightmare was just beginning. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The white silk of my wedding dress felt suffocating as I drove through the darkening streets, my cheek still throbbing where Mark's shoe had connected. I didn't even know where I was going until I found myself pulling into Sarah's driveway. Sarah took one look at me standing on her doorstep in my torn wedding dress, mascara streaking down my face, and immediately pulled me inside. "Oh, honey," she whispered, wrapping me in her arms. "I saw the videos already. They're everywhere. Videos. Plural." My stomach dropped. "How many people recorded it? Does it matter?" She helped me out of my wedding dress, the beautiful gown that had cost thousands of dollars and now felt like a costume from a nightmare. "What matters is that you're safe." As Sarah made tea, my phone started buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. First, it was my parents, frantic and sobbing. Then my brother, furious and asking for Mark's address. Then, in college, friends, coworkers, and distant relatives who'd seen the footage online. The video was spreading faster than wildfire. Groom assaults bride at wedding was already trending locally on social media. Strangers were sharing it, commenting, taking sides. Most were horrified and supportive, but some were blaming me. She must have done something to deserve it. We don't know the whole story. Marriage is about forgiveness. Each comment felt like another slap. Then Mark's messages started coming through. First, they were angry. "You made a scene and embarrassed me in front of everyone. Come home so we can fix this." Then panicked. "The video is everywhere. My boss called. You need to help me fix this." Then threatening, "You can't just leave me. We're married. You belong to me now." Finally, manipulative. "You know I love you. I was just stressed. My mom was crying and I wasn't thinking straight. Please come home, baby." Each message made me feel sicker. Sarah grabbed my phone and started screenshotting everything. "Evidence," she said grimly. My parents arrived within an hour, my mother crying and my father's face dark with rage. "I should have known," Dad kept saying. "There were signs. I should have stopped this wedding." "What signs?" I asked. But deep down, I was starting to remember things. Mark's controlling behavior that I'd dismissed as caring. His jealousy that I'd found romantic. The way he always had to be right in every argument. The local news called "wanting a statement." My workplace sent flowers and told me to take all the time I needed. My landlord from before I moved in with Mark called, saying my old apartment was available if I needed it. But the worst part was the uncertainty. Were we actually married? The ceremony had been completed, but the papers weren't filed yet. What did that mean legally? As I tried to sleep on Sarah's couch that night, my phone lit up with yet another notification. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. The next morning, my phone rang with that same unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end made my heart stop. "Is this the bride from yesterday's wedding? The one that's all over the internet?" The woman's voice was soft but urgent. My heart was pounding. "Who is this?" "My name is Emma. I was Mark's fiancée 5 years ago." There was a long pause. "The same thing happened to me." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean?" "He hit me too, at our engagement party, in front of everyone, with a champagne bottle." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. "I saw your video online last night, and I knew I had to call you." I was speechless. Mark had been engaged before. He'd never mentioned Emma. Never mentioned being engaged to anyone else. "I know this is shocking," Emma continued, "but you need to know you're not the first. And his mother, she planned it. Just like she planned what happened to you." "That's impossible," I whispered. But even as I said it, I remembered the satisfied look on his mother's face after Mark hit me. "She calls it breaking them in," Emma explained. "It's some sick family tradition. She orchestrates a confrontation to humiliate the woman publicly, to show her who's really in control of Mark. It's psychological warfare." Sarah was staring at me in horror as she listened to my side of the conversation. "There are others," Emma said quietly. "After I left Mark, I started researching. Found his college girlfriend, whom he pushed downstairs at a fraternity party. Found a woman he dated for 2 years, a woman whom he slapped at her sister's wedding. His mother always convinces people it was a one-time thing. Stress, alcohol, whatever." My legs felt weak. I sat down heavily on Sarah's couch. "How many others?" "At least 6 that I found. Maybe more." Emma's voice grew stronger. "We started a group chat after I saw your video. We want to help you." Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with messages from Mark's other victims. Each story was eerily similar. Public humiliation orchestrated by his mother, followed by a cycle of apologies, promises to change, and escalating control. "Lisa." He threw a drink in my face at his company Christmas party. His mom said I was flirting with his boss. "Rebecca." He pushed me into a fountain at his cousin's wedding, said I was being attention-seeking. "Michelle." Slapped me in front of his whole family at Thanksgiving. His mother said I deserved it for correcting Mark about something. The pattern was clear. Mark and his mother were predators who targeted kind, successful women and systematically broke them down. The public assault wasn't a moment of anger. It was a calculated attack designed to establish dominance. His family has money and connections, Emma warned. They've covered up these incidents for years, paid off venues, threatened photographers, silenced victims with NDAs. What do? I asked. We go public, Emma said firmly. All of us, together. It's the only way to stop him from doing this to someone else. But just as we were planning to expose everything, Sarah grabbed my arm and pointed toward the window. Mark's car was pulling into her driveway. He's here, Sarah whispered, immediately calling 911 while I ducked away from the window. Mark was stumbling up the walkway, clearly drunk, his wedding tuxedo wrinkled and stained. Bang, bang, bang. His fists hammered against the door. Sarah, I know she's in there. I need to talk to my wife. His voice was slurred and desperate. The police are on their way, Sarah told me quietly. But Mark could apparently hear us through the thin door. Please, baby, just let me explain, he called out, his tone switching to fake sweetness. I made a mistake. I was stressed, my mom was upset, and I wasn't thinking clearly. I was shaking, pressed against the back wall of Sarah's living room, still holding my phone with the group chat of his other victims. They were all sending messages of support and sharing their own stories of Mark stalking them after they left. You can't hide from me forever. Mark's voice turned ugly again. We're married now. You belong to me. Sarah looked through the peephole. He's completely wasted. And, oh God, his mother is in the car. Sure enough. I could see her silhouette in the passenger seat, probably orchestrating this whole scene, just like she'd orchestrated yesterday's assault. Sarah, I know you're poisoning her against me. Mark was getting more aggressive. She was fine until she started listening to you. The banging got louder. He was throwing his whole body against the door now. My life is ruined, he screamed. The video is everywhere. I lost my job. My friends won't return my calls. You have to help me fix this. Through the phone, Emma's voice was steady and reassuring. This is exactly what he did to me. The begging, the threats, the blame shifting. Don't let him in. I gave you everything. Mark's voice cracked with fake emotion. 3 years of my life. A beautiful wedding. And this is how you repay me? More banging. Something crashed. Maybe he'd kicked over Sarah's plant pot. If you don't come out, I'll tell everyone what you're really like. I'll ruin you like you're ruining me. But then I heard the most chilling thing yet. His mother's voice calling from the car. Tell her if she doesn't come home tonight, there will be consequences. Red and blue lights suddenly flashed through the window. 2 police officers were getting out of their patrol car, and Mark immediately changed his tune. Officers, thank God you're here, he said in his most charming voice. My wife is having some kind of breakdown. Her friend won't let me see her. I could hear one officer's calm, professional voice. Sir, step away from the door. We need to talk. Through Sarah's window, I watched as Mark tried to charm the officers, explaining that this was all a misunderstanding and that his emotional wife was overreacting to a small argument. But then the officer said something that changed everything. Sir, we've seen the video. You're under arrest. The next morning, I got a call that changed everything. Mark's mother wanted to meet. I stared at my phone in disbelief. After everything that had happened, after orchestrating my public humiliation, Mark's mother wanted to meet? Alone? It's obviously a trap, Sarah said when I told her about the call. Don't go. But something in her voice had sounded different, broken, defeated, not the calculated coldness I'd seen at the wedding. Against everyone's advice, I agreed to meet her at a busy coffee shop downtown, with Sarah sitting at a nearby table for backup and my phone recording everything. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the perfectly put-together woman who'd smirked while her son assaulted me. This woman looked like she'd aged 10 years in 2 days. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Thank you for coming, she said quietly, sitting across from me. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her coffee cup. What do you want? I asked coldly. She took a shuddering breath. I want to tell you the truth, about everything. For the next hour, she unraveled a story that was even worse than I'd imagined. The cycle of abuse in their family went back generations. Mark's grandfather had beaten his grandmother publicly to keep her in line. Mark's father had done the same to her. I was 19 when I married Mark's father. she whispered. He hit me on our wedding night. Said it was to establish who was boss in our marriage. His mother told me it was normal, that all good wives needed to be broken in. She described decades of abuse, not just physical, but psychological. She'd been isolated from her family, controlled financially, and gaslit into believing she deserved the treatment. When Mark got older, his father started teaching him that women needed to be controlled. I watched my sweet little boy turn into a monster. Tears streamed down her face. And instead of protecting the women he dated, I helped him hurt them. Why? I asked, though I thought I knew the answer. Because if they could handle it, if they stayed, then I wouldn't be alone in this family, she said. If they were strong enough to take the abuse, maybe they could help me change things from the inside. So you sacrificed innocent women to avoid dealing with your own situation. She nodded, sobbing openly now. I convinced myself I was testing them, seeing if they were strong enough for this family. But really, I was just perpetuating the cycle. Then she did something that shocked me. She pulled out a thick manila envelope. This is evidence, 30 years of it. Photos of my injuries, medical records, police reports that were buried, financial records showing payoffs to Mark's other victims. She slid it across the table. I want to testify against him, against my husband. I want to help you put them both away. Why now? I asked. Because watching that video, seeing the look on your face when he hit you, I saw myself 30 years ago, and I realized I'd become just as much of a monster as they were. 6 months later, I stood in a courtroom as Mark's fate was decided. The courtroom was packed. Media, supporters, and Mark's other victims filled every seat. I sat in the front row between Sarah and Emma, watching as the prosecutor presented our case. The evidence was overwhelming. The wedding video, Mark's threatening voicemails, testimony from 6 other victims, and most damning of all, his own mother's confession and 30 years of documentation. Mark's lawyer tried every trick, claiming I'd provoked him, that the assault was an isolated incident, that the media attention had unfairly prejudiced the jury. But the pattern of abuse was undeniable. When it was my turn to give my victim impact statement, I stood on shaking legs and looked directly at Mark. He couldn't meet my eyes. You didn't just hit me with a shoe, I said clearly. You tried to break my spirit in the most public, humiliating way possible. You and your mother planned to destroy my sense of self-worth on what should have been the happiest day of my life. I looked at each of his other victims, drawing strength from their brave faces. But you failed, because I didn't stay broken. I found my voice, I found my strength, and I found a sisterhood of survivors who refused to let you hurt anyone else. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts: assault, stalking, harassment, and criminal intimidation. Mark was sentenced to 3 years in prison and 5 years of probation. His father received similar charges for his decades of abuse. But the real victory came afterward. Our case sparked national conversations about wedding day abuse and family cycles of violence. I testified before Congress about the need for stronger domestic violence protections. We established a foundation helping other survivors find legal support and safe housing. Mark's mother kept her promise. She divorced her husband, entered intensive therapy, and became an unlikely advocate for abuse survivors. Her testimony helped convict 3 other abusers in similar cases. 2 years later, I stood in a small garden ceremony surrounded by my chosen family, Sarah, Emma, the other survivors who'd become my closest friends, and David, the gentleman who'd helped me learn what real love looked like. This time, there were no threats, no manipulation, no family members plotting my humiliation. Just love, respect, and the promise of a future built on equality and kindness. As David and I exchanged vows, I thought about that broken girl who'd fled her wedding in a torn dress. She'd survived the worst day of her life and turned it into the catalyst for the best decision she'd ever make. Choosing herself, choosing freedom, choosing to fight back. Mark was still in prison. His appeals had been denied, and he'd lost everything: his family's money, his reputation, his freedom. Sometimes, the worst people face the consequences they've always deserved. I'm not a victim anymore, I told the small gathering in my speech. I'm a survivor helping other survivors find their strength. And that shoe that was meant to break me, it set me free instead. The end.